All right, we are on air. Happy January 14th. It is one day before the big release of Backdrop 1.3.0. We're all very excited about it. So thanks for joining in the meeting. A couple of general announcements. As usual, you can get your Dragon t-shirts and hoodies from backdropcms.org/contribute. If you make a donation, we'll mail you a shirt or a hoodie if you live in the United States. If you're a Backdrop contributed developer, Backdrop contributor, you can be a designer or a marketing writer or whatever, you've already earned your t-shirt and we'll send you one for free. So just send an email to info@backdropcms.org. If you're not yet a contributor, you can always contribute dollars, and your thank you gift is going to be a t-shirt or a hoodie depending on your donation amount. So definitely get your shirts and hoodies before they're gone. We are going to be attending Sand Camp at the end of the month, and you can pick them up in person there if you would rather test drive sizes and softness ahead of time. We also have free PHP Storm licenses for Backdrop contributed developers. So in this case, you need to be a member of the Backdrop contrib group on GitHub. That's how PHP Storm checks that we're not giving licenses to people we're not supposed to be giving licenses to. So if you have ported a module theme or layout, or you want to maintain a module theme or layout, we can get you included in the contrib group and send you off a license key. I know I've had a couple of people who've applied recently, which is fantastic, and as soon as we get you through the application process, we'll send you that license key for PHP Storm. So thanks a lot, and keys are on the way. Anyone who needs help with that process can also send an email to info@backdropcms.org. Sometimes it's a little confusing as to what is required in order to do that. We'll help walk you through it. We don't have any updates from the Project Management Committee at this time, so I'm going to turn the meeting over to Nate to give us a quick update on community growth.
Yeah, boy, another exciting week over in Contrib land, and Growth land, actually. We have 190 total projects for Backdrop CMS. There's some new modules and some new layouts, actually, that were added this past week. We've had 3 new Contrib projects added to the Contrib group since last week. We have 116 total projects with official releases on backdropcms.org. 156 total releases of those projects. There's been 3 updates to existing modules since last meeting. And we have 2 new contributors, bringing our total to 45 in the Backdrop Contrib group. Welcome Dan Boulay and EarthDay47, whose first name is also Wes, so we're about to have 2 Wes's. But we're really excited to have new Contrib developers. Dan worked on Unsubscribe module, and EarthDay has been working on location, as well as he volunteered to pick up the set of geo modules that another contributor had already ported but said that they wouldn't have time to actually maintain. So that's really exciting. EarthDay's also been involved in the Drupal contrib world for a long time, so it's really great to have that experience brought to Backdrop. Man, backdropcms.org doubled its numbers of registered users since last week. We now have 68 total user accounts on backdropcms.org, and that's 36 new users since last week, which is pretty bananas. It kind of there's not a whole lot that you can do on backdropcms.org, but I think people are mostly just coming in to claim their low user numbers. But it really kind of makes me think that somebody mentioned that we should try to automate as much as possible our contrib application, which I think would be a great idea. You know, basically like checking that there's a README, checking that there's a license file, and that a project history is longer than like a week, you know, make sure that it actually matches those things. And if we can automate those processes and make it so that people can get through them faster, like the feedback loop right now is about 24 hours, which is great, but not nearly as good as if it were, you know, 24 seconds. And I think that like the user accounts on backdropcms.org, it shows us that if we had more automated processes where people could help themselves, then we could grow our community a lot faster. So I don't know. That's wish list stuff. I'd really love that if we could start automating some of these things more, because quick feedback is really key, it seems. So anyway, lots of great growth this past week, and we're really excited to see our momentum building up even further. Let's see. The next item on the agenda is infrastructure. Infrastructure, all the things around the Backdrop software that isn't the software itself. One thing we have on here, we've been talking about every week, is the update checking and the ability for backdropcms.org to calculate usage statistics. We have been collecting these usage statistics for months now, but we're not actually aggregating them yet due to what had been a bug in the aggregation script. That bug has been fixed, or at least is ready to be fixed, but we still haven't actually deployed it. I think the primary concern that I have there in that issue that is listed from the agenda is we're currently counting Travis CI installations as individual sites, and anything that comes from the Travis CI or any automated tests shouldn't count towards our usage statistics, and so that's throwing off our numbers based on like when we have a week that we have a bunch of development, like this past week or the past 2 or 3 weeks. Our numbers surge, and then when development hits a lull, the numbers go back down. And so it would be great if we need to update our testing somehow to exclude those test bots so that they don't get counted towards the usage statistics.
Would that work if we just turned off the update status module on the testing profile?
Well, the trouble is that when you run an automated test, we install we install Backdrop like 2,000 times, like at least. I mean, probably it's more like 8,000 installs when you run the full set of tests, and every single one of those is checking in to backdropcms.org saying, "Hey, I'm a new site. Hey, I'm a new site. Hey, I'm a new site."
Right. But if we turned off the update status module, none of that would happen.
Oh, right, but the update status module already is turned off in the testing profile and the minimal profile, but there's still like 1 out of 5 tests is using the standard profile.
So we need to find a way for the standard profile to know if it's in a test or not.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we need to, and if it's in a test, then it should just bail out or something.
Yeah.
Because we could actually speed up our tests quite a bit if we did that, because then they wouldn't be, they wouldn't be doing an HTTP request as part of the install process, which would be good.
But then also, we should be able to just, these are only reporting in like once or over a couple times in one day. So it's like all we have to do is filter out any sites that have only checked in once and never on another day.
Right. Yeah, that's another option that we could do as well. Right now, it's if a site has checked in at all over a week-long period, then it counts as an install during that week, which is not, it's not great.
Well, there could also be, I don't know how much we want to check this, but there could also be people who install Backdrop and then turn off that module. I don't know if we want to count that or not, or if that's like a respect their wishes if they said they didn't want to be checked to undo the check they accidentally did first kind of thing. But
yeah, that sounds like a better, more ethical thing.
Didn't mean to check in, don't worry, we can undo it.
Yeah. So anyway, just fixing that would be one way or the other. I like the idea of blocking it from hitting backdropcms.org in the first place, because that will make it run faster. Like just the testing process will go faster.
And we should do both.
Yeah. Let's see. After we have those numbers coming in, not only coming in but also getting crunched, we also want to start collecting usage of individual features. And Jen added some new ones this past week. Things like which individual core modules are enabled, is clean URLs enabled, which core layouts are actually being used on the site, maybe how many layouts are being used, like how many layouts are on a typical site. Let's see, which core field types are in use, which contrib modules, like the individual modules, not the projects, are in use amongst those modules, color module, which color palettes people are using, or if they're using any at all. Those sorts of things, if we can start accruing that data, it'll give us better information on which to inform our decisions about what features we should be including or what things we even potentially should remove in future versions of Backdrop.
It also helped with our updates too. Like we committed this issue this week about changing Bartik's color from blue to black, but then we had to like write this update that was like, for the people that were using blue, like how are we going to not accidentally change the color of their site? And we went through several iterations of very complicated updates and then just decided to do like a simple fallback where we added a style sheet. It was much easier. But just that kind of stuff where it's like, how do we know who is using color module and who is using this palette? And wouldn't it be nice if we had statistics on that? Because if we looked at it and we're like, oh, there's one person, we wouldn't have spent like 5 days trying to figure out a really complicated update path for that. We've just been like, oh, we should remove this from core. But that wasn't, you know, since we don't have those statistics, we still have to handle that case really gracefully right now. So just starting to track stuff like that I think will be helpful. And especially with layouts and a new front-end theme going in 1.4, we're going to need to deal with the same thing again, where it's like we're going to have to write update scripts for all of these people who are currently running the default theme to change to a new or not, and how do you handle that? So just trying to figure out, like, you know, what's the best way to deal with this, especially within, you know, the 1.x release cycle. We've got to keep supporting everything that was there before. So more information would be good.
All right, next item on the list, Drush for Backdrop. Drush for Backdrop is issue number 47 in the issue queue, our longest running open issue, I do believe. We have an open prototype of Drush working for Backdrop. It's a Drush extension, so you can drop it in your .drush directory in your home profile or directly in your project or into the Drush installation itself, and Drush will find those extensions, and then it will magically just start seeing that it is an actual Backdrop website and can identify how to work with it. The downside of that is that we have to rewrite basically all of the commands because of the way Drush is written, that basically a command just maps directly to a chunk of code. There's no abstraction that it says this, you know, under these different situations, call these different callbacks within your extensions. It's just callback, execute code, and if Drupal 6 do this, if Drupal 7 do that, and if Drupal 8 do this. So making it work for Backdrop, we need some special code, which means we basically need to add in a different command in addition to the Drupal ones. But there's the prototype is currently hanging out in my sandbox. I wish I could commit to moving that right away, but with the release tomorrow, I think I'm really just been swamped and preoccupied with getting everything reviewed and pushed in there. But as soon as possible, I know Serendipity, Jeff, you've been working a lot on making Drush work in certain situations, and you've ran into some issues as well as filed some pull requests to add new features. That's all awesome. As soon as we get this moved into the contrib group, which I want to do as soon as possible, I'd like to just add you as a maintainer, and then you can just kind of go to town on it, because you've been working on it more than I have, and I think that would be fantastic just to have you empowered to just iterate as quickly as possible on that. There's not a whole lot to lose at this point. It's just, you know, it's super beta at this point. Let's see. So there's a lot of issues that have been filed currently under that sandbox. It's under github.com/quicksketch/backdrop-drush. And some of those things are great, like Drush UpDB apparently is broken, but there's a pull request to fix it. There's some pull requests to add new features. So that's great to see that moving along, even if the changes haven't been merged yet. Let's see. GitHub automation. I think, Jen, did you just add this to the agenda here, that the approval of GitHub or contrib group applications? Yeah, that would be an awesome thing to do. We have a whole tag for things that we would like to automate in the Backdrop contrib, or in the Backdrop. Let's see. It looks like this is in the Backdrop CMS.org issue queue. because backdropcms.org is basically where all the automations live, where GitHub pings us at backdropcms.org, and then backdropcms.org has basically a super key to GitHub that lets it modify the contrib group and the core project in any way that we want to make it so that we can integrate things between what people are doing in the issue queue and what they're doing in the contrib group, or what they're doing in the backdrop ops group. Any of those things, we can automate any sort of action happening in any of those places hits backdropcms.org, and then backdropcms.org can respond to those and make a change back to GitHub, which is exactly how our packager works right now. But we've got a bunch of other things that we would like to do to automate those processes. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, actually. But I won't get into that. There's a tag, GitHub-automation, in the backdropcms.org issue queue. If we have any wizards out there that are interested in working with the GitHub API, which actually is a real joy to work with, then take a look at that list of tags, that list of issues.
May I ask about SSO with GitHub? Doesn't look like OAuth current Drupal project is a good starting spot. Do you have a good starting spot, or should we just roll our own from scratch GitHub API?
Yeah, I was looking at that too, and I'm not sure there is a good Drupal project to start with. Okay. Nate has a ton of experience on single sign-on stuff, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, but your general impression is that, like, just start from scratch.
Well, the OAuth project is great, really. I mean, it's actually a really pretty good implementation, but it's also fairly abstract. It's useful if you actually have multiple OAuth authentications, or if you also are dealing with, you need to provide your own OAuth server and you've got your own little satellite of sites that single sign on onto your parent site, then it makes a good solution for that too. But for single sign-on with GitHub, I would be tempted, I'm not sure this is the best approach, but it might be worth looking at. Take a look at the Facebook OAuth module, the FB OAuth module, which is not dependent upon the OAuth parent project. It's just an OAuth implementation of signing into Facebook. And because it's all OAuth, Facebook and GitHub both, you probably could basically just take everything that said Facebook and replace it all with GitHub, and it would pretty much almost work. Mm-hmm. So that might be an interesting way just to make a direct implementation against GitHub based off of the direct implementation of Facebook.
That's great. Thank you.
Let's see. Jen, why don't you take it to talk about the primary website? That's usually your vote.
Sure. So backdropcms.org in the last few weeks have had a bunch of changes. We put up the user profile pages, which is really exciting because we obviously have a bunch of people signing up now, which is great. We also, since I think our last meeting, had a blog post that come out this week. Maybe it was last Friday, I think. Our first blog post went up. We've had a bunch of great tweets and noise about it. People have read it. People are creating accounts, which I think is fantastic. We have kind of made a commitment to keep writing blog posts, which I think is important. Nate is going to write the next one, which is going to be about the 1.3 release, which is tomorrow. So I don't know if that blog post should go up tomorrow. I think maybe we should give ourselves a couple of days and it'll go up on Monday or maybe even next Friday, depending on what we find in that next release. If we need to fix anything right away, we can put the blog post up with 1.3.1. That might be a good plan. And then we also are interested in having anyone else write blog posts too. So if you have anything you want to share with the community, our official schedule is to do an official scheduled release every other week. And then that way, if anyone has anything that's super timely that needs to come out sooner, we can squeeze them in between. So I would say, like, the more voices in the blog, the better. So if anyone has anything you want to share, like a little trick, a little thing you want to show off, a website you want to showcase, whatever it is, just a something you think is cool about Backdrop, or whatever it is, just add a comment to the issue. We have an issue for our blog schedule, which is number 158, and we'll try and get you on there. I know we've got Duck Wilmots working on a bunch of stuff right now, and I think Sudaben's got some coming as well. So hooray! Everyone wants to talk about Backdrop, totally welcome to on the blog. We also, I haven't turned on comments for the blog yet, but we should maybe think about whether we want to do that. The thing that scares me about turning on comments is that someone's going to have to read them and respond to them. And I feel like that's another chunk of time I'm not really sure I'm willing to handle. But maybe if we could get like Clonos or someone else who's really good at staying on top of communication to just be like aware of what's going on in the blog and then like ping people as necessary if we need responses, that might be a good way to handle it. So I'd just say kind of anyone, not necessarily Clonos, open call to anyone who's willing to kind of keep an eye on the blog and, you know, watch new comments as they come in and make sure that people get their feedback addressed. I think we could think about turning on comments in the blog. I think maybe we should also figure out which kinds of blog posts we want to solicit feedback on. I think things like there's a new release might not be something that would start a conversation, but there could be plenty of blog posts where you want to have a conversation, and so we can also use that like comment off on setting that comes in Backdrop to figure out when it's a good idea to turn on comments and when not. So that's also something up for review or up for discussion if anyone wants to have a blog post and have a conversation, we can turn them on then. We also have, we're working on integration with Civi CRM. One of our plans is to do some cross-blogging between as many other websites as we can in our own. And so we've been talking with the folks at Civi to try and figure out how to do shared marketing around Civi and Backdrop working together. I think it would be great if we could get one or several of them to blog on Backdrop's website. We've offered to blog on their website. So far, they seem on board with that. We don't actually have a schedule up yet, but it seems like a great way to kind of reach each other's audiences as well. And I have reached out to a whole bunch of the people we've done podcasts with before about doing Backdrop podcasts about, you know, Backdrop 1 year later, 1.3 release, what's happened to our community, what's going on with Contrib, like all of the questions that were kind of up in the air a year ago when we did our last blog post now kind of have answers and paths forward. And so far we've gotten a really good response from all of the podcast people. Pretty much everyone has said yes, they're interested in doing it, and we're just trying to figure out when. So I think that sounds really good. I would like to say that it would be great if we could get more people involved in those podcasts too. So if anyone really wants to be on a podcast and share their perspective of being involved in Backdrop, send an email to info@backdropcms.org and we'll try and figure out which one works with your schedule and get you in there too. Some of the podcasts I think are going to be like Backdrop versus Drupal 8, kind of compare contrast, which is also kind of fascinating to me because I don't really know what's been going on in Drupal 8 so much since it's come out. Like I don't know how they're handling their new release schedule, and I'm really curious to see people who've been using Drupal 8, like what their perspective is. So I think that would be kind of a fun, like, I'll show you yours, you show me mine kind of podcast situation where we can do a little like, oh yeah, well I've got responsive tabs too, and we can like, you know, see how it works. So fun things afoot in terms of marketing, which I think will be really great. Let's see, we have, oh yeah, so we've also been talking to Todd Tomlinson, who wrote the first Drupal Backdrop, or upgrading from Drupal to Backdrop book, which came out in December. He's working on an intro to Backdrop book as well. And so he sent us an email earlier this week with an outline saying like, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. Is there anything I've missed? Like, I'd love to have your eyes on it. And it looks fantastic. So I'm really excited to see that coming out. It should be out in Q2. So keep your eyes open for a new Backdrop book coming. So that's super exciting. All right. Let's see. Shall we talk about Backdrop itself? So exciting. So Backdrop 1.2.3 came out, and that included a whole bunch of kind of queued issues that we'd been waiting on. None were super urgent, but it had a whole bunch of cross ports from 777, I think, in it, as well as a bunch of lower priority bug fixes. So Nate, you did that, I think, 2 weeks ago, or was it last? It was 2 weeks ago, which is great. And so now we've got another set, what is that called? Bug fix release 124, which will come out the same time as 130. That's what we're guessing. And so all of the fixes for both of those will be together. And we have 130 coming out tomorrow, which is super exciting. We've made a ton of progress on a whole bunch of stuff that was in our queue for 130. Nate, you've been doing all of the merging on these, so do you want me to turn this back over to you to talk about especially the super exciting blocks and layouts progress?
Yeah, sure. Boy, there's been so much stuff. Actually, I don't even think it's on this list. I think it must have gotten removed. But transliteration, I guess, did we put that in before this last week? Well, anyway, transliteration is in core. It's really exciting, including integration with machine names. That'll make internationalized or non-English, actually, it doesn't need to be internationalized, just a non-English website, a lot friendlier when they're typing in characters, making machine names that actually make sense instead of a bunch of underscores, or worse, no characters at all, which is what had happened previously with machine names. Let's see, in layouts land, a bunch of stuff has landed recently. We added one field per block, which makes it so that on node pages, if you're on node/10 or whatever, you can lay out all of the individual fields for that node in any region on the page that you want, which is really exciting. And those blocks are contextually only available, of course, if you're in a place that has a node in which you can display those fields in the first place. So those fields are not, or those blocks are not shown on the default layout. You need to actually make a layout at node/node ID, and then it will make those blocks available, which is really cool. Building on some of the functionality that we added a couple weeks ago, where blocks were moved from being content into being configuration, thanks to Mike's persistence there. We expanded that and made it so that now from the Layouts UI, you can add a custom text block directly from the UI, so you don't need to go and add a custom block first and then add it to the Layouts UI, like hopping around, you know, the classic kind of like pogo sticking behavior that you get in Drupal all the time. You can now add a custom text block directly from within the Layouts UI, which is awesome. However, the weird thing right now is that those text blocks are currently stored in the layout config and not in the custom block config. Basically, they're not reusable. But we have an issue to make it so that they toggle in between them at issue 1515, which basically makes it so that you can take a text block, check a little box that says make it reusable, and then it becomes stored in its own config file and can be reused multiple times between different layouts. Anyway, it sounds complicated, but it's in practice it's really simple and straightforward. It's just like, I want to add a custom block. Bam, add the custom block. Add the custom block. Oh, I want to make it reusable. Check the box. It's awesome. I'm really excited about it. Okay, let's see. So that's some really exciting things over in Layout Land. Rich text editor follow-ups. We did actually merge an issue this past week just to clean up filter tips a little bit. It's not as elaborate as some of our plans for filter tips, but those other issues will probably just get kicked to 1.4, which is fine. Let's see. We're trying to work on this issue for a notification icon over in 639, and we've had 3 different approaches to it. Actually, more than that if you count the ones that we didn't write code for. We've had several approaches to making it just so that we don't need to display a giant red error at the top of every other page in the admin section when there's a site status problem, like, you know, there's a security update or your files directory isn't writable. Rather than spewing giant red errors all over the place, we're going to put a little red dot in the admin bar, basically saying, hey, there's a problem with your site. And if you click it, it takes you to the status report. That issue keeps getting reduced and reduced in scope to the point that now we actually have something that we can implement, or we have already implemented, but it just needs to be updated for the latest code, for the latest feedback, I should say. So that issue just needs a re-roll to address some minor feedback, and then we'll probably see that in later today or tomorrow before the release, which is exciting. Project Browser, today I moved that into the 1.4 milestone, so I moved it out of being something that's tomorrow into something that is probably 4 months from now. The Project Browser implementation actually works pretty awesome. Like you can find a project, you can just click it, and then it installs it. It actually really is a pretty slick process, and overall like a major improvement. However, the integration isn't the tightest. Like there's still some cruft from the way prior to having the project browser that is a little bit weird. There's also some talk about, now that we have a little bit more time, if we move this 4 months from now, that maybe we should separate that from update module, because it's a little bit weird that you would need to have something that was telling you new versions of modules are always available in order to install modules. A little bit weird. So if it's possible to separate those two, that might be great to do. Anyway, that's issue 1399. That's been kicked to 1.4. So hopefully we'll see that in the next release. It is really awesome, and there's been a lot of great work on it, and we're hoping to see it in the next release. This one issue just won't go away, this last item we have for 1.3, that hasn't been updated or worked on, I don't think, this entire release, which is the comment administration is our last administration view, or our last administrative listing that is still not a view, and that's issue 549. It's pretty unlikely that that will get fixed before tomorrow, but it's not difficult. It just it's like all of our other conversions. It just takes a little bit of effort and some planning, because you have to write an upgrade path. But it's not particularly difficult. Maybe I doubt we'll see it before tomorrow, but one can always hope.
Nate, should we really be trying to like squeeze in final issues like and write up code like the day before release? Like, should we perhaps have some sort of like, I don't know, code freeze or something like a week before release?
What?
So we could actually try out the new version before we release it, and
That's crazy.
not make last minute additions that end up like breaking things.
That's why we have bug fix releases, Mike.
Okay, fine. You know, we can play Wild West a bit longer.
Yeah, I do think you're right that playing Wild West for a much longer than we have been is not a good idea. That in the future that we should try to prevent this kind of behavior. Just for comparison, I found this interesting. I was reading. This was probably, I don't know, 9 months ago. I was reading up on WordPress's release cycle documentation about how they manage their, their new versions when they come out, and it's pretty awesome how straightforward they are, even today, about, the releases come out like clockwork. That's for certain. And then they say, we usually make a bug fix release 2 or 3 days after the last release to fix all the stuff we broke. Winky face. Just like, wow. I mean, maybe that's actually not the way that they roll anymore, but it definitely was the way that they described that they roll out their releases. Not saying that we should aspire to breaking stuff immediately and then fixing it 3 days later, But I agree. So maybe, at the very least, maybe let's not take on the last issue I just mentioned, common administration, considering that hasn't even been.
Or at least come up with like the types of bugs we definitely shouldn't do in the like any sort of upgrade path that's like modifying data and stuff like that. We should definitely have more time and effort to check, just because some bugs you make can't be fixed after the fact.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, data manipulation right before, not the greatest idea. Yeah, other things like CSS fixing, like Wes is talking about, we can actually fix those in like there's no rush to make to fix a CSS bug or something like that that we've had lingering, because we can always fix it immediate, like anytime. You know, it doesn't need to get into the next minor release. It can be fixed in any bug fix release that happens periodically. Let's see. There's also a list of other issues for 1.3. We haven't been very diligent about removing the things from the 1.3 list that aren't going to make it yet. There's still, it looks like about 10 items or maybe a dozen that that are slated for 1.3 that are in either a needs work or needs review status, or sometimes not even, sometimes work hasn't even begun on them. What we usually do after a minor release happens is we allow stuff to be kicked to the next minor release once. So if it was slated for 1.3 and it didn't make it, it gets moved to 1.4. But if 1.4 comes around and the feature still hasn't been implemented, we don't move it to 1.5. We actually just say the future of this thing is not certain enough that it is slated for the next release, and then we just move it back into the general 1.x pool until enough momentum is built up around it that we can feel confident about its release date. Yeah, so that's happening tomorrow. We're really excited. There's a lot of really great stuff in 1.3. It had been termed the UX release, which turned out to really be pretty much the case. There is some new features like transliteration and some of this new layout stuff, but all of those things are actually still centered around our core goal for this release, which is basically increasing the consistency and the usability of the software. And I really think that we've accomplished that in this release, and it's going to be really exciting to have all of our latest and greatest stuff that we've been working on for the past couple of months out as of tomorrow. Anything else on 1.3? No. Okay. 1.4, the next minor release is going to be May 15th, 2016, 4 months from now. And our primary goals for that release are references module. We'd like to solve once and for all our references problem. Right now we have a contrib version of node reference and user reference module, and then in core, of course, we have the term reference module that is part of just the taxonomy module. And we'd like to consolidate all of those different ways of referencing content into a single references module that lives in core, so that people won't need to kind of have this divide between which references module do I use. Do I use entity reference? Do I use node reference? Do I use some other kind of reference module? And so we're hoping that we can include in 1.4 a core references module. And I think as part of that, we'll also need to figure out some battle plans for upgrade paths, whether that is a contrib version or contrib something or other that can do those upgrade paths, or whether the data schema is identical to entity reference that it could potentially just build off of those existing tables. There's a lot of things to consider there. And that's issue 1301. We'd also like to figure out something that handles... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Nate. I was just going to say I'm definitely interested in that issue, and I'd offer to help.
Okay,
do what
awesome.
I can to help lead it or promote it.
Basically we want the functionality of entity reference module without the silliness that is entity reference module. Like the entity reference module is a bucket of worms.
Yeah, it is. It's not good code that we want to use. So, but yeah, so I've already started working on it a little bit, and I have some ideas that I need to check out. But yeah, so I'm definitely that's the thing that I want to accomplish for the next release.
Awesome. That would be fantastic to have your hand in that, Mike. Yeah, with our new entity API that's in core, the references module, entity reference in Drupal 7 is dependent upon entity module, but that really probably is not necessary in our situation because all of the abstractions that are necessary are already in core, like a way of getting the URL for each type of reference or the type or the bundle. All of that stuff is all generically accessible across the board in Backdrop, which is nice because it wasn't in 777. But also other features, redirect module, something like redirect we'd like to have in core, primarily because we have path auto in core, and right now when you create a new path, like if you change the title of something, it also updates its path alias. But right now the only options for what to do with the old alias are really poor. You can delete the old alias, you can, what are the options? You can delete the alias, or what? I think that's kind of it, isn't it? You can delete all the, or you can leave it there so that you have two aliases pointing at the same thing. But the real ideal solution, of course, is something like redirect module, where if you change the title on a node and it changes the URL, then of course it should add a redirect. And so we've got this weird almost dependency, really. In order to make your site make sense, you have to go in and install redirect module from Contrib in order to work with the core path auto. And we'd like to get that problem solved so that core behaves reasonably out of the box rather than this bizarre, like, it'll delete your old alias when you create a new one, which is just silly. Let's see, wish lists. Maybe I shouldn't call it wish list, but we'd love to have a new front-end theme in Backdrop as soon as possible. And so we have it slated for 1.4. It's issue 1361. And our hope there is that someone can write up a really badass Contrib theme, and then everyone will love it, and then we'll move it into core. That's the hope and battle plan for that issue. We'd also like to add additional core layouts. There was a lot of talk about using the Radix layouts at one point. Let's see, this link isn't correct, but exactly if we use the Radix layouts or some other layouts, just having more flexibility in core to position your blocks is something that we're interested in. And so there's a lot of banter going back and forth about what that looks like, whether it's Radix or whether it's something else in the issue queue. Right now the link in the agenda is not correct, though. It's linking to the theme issue. We can get that fixed up.
Oh, sorry.
Let's see. And that's it. We have, as always, continual UX and DX improvements, user experience and developer experience improvements that are just tagged with square brackets in the issue title. And those we like to try to pay particular attention to because really, I mean, like this last release showed, there's so many areas that we can just improve on what we have, that improving on what we have is just like such a priority for us over adding in like yet another module, adding in yet another module. Sprints. Today is the last day before the release of Backdrop 1.3.0, and so all day today we're going to be working as hard as possible, reviewing the things that are nearly done, getting the last things merged in there, polishing the things that we have for the release tomorrow. If history is any indicator, the release tomorrow probably will be later in the day. I imagine that's how it will go. If not for the reason that we're finishing the code, just because maybe for the reason that we're going to be finishing up the blog posts and the marketing and things like that. So hang out with us today. We'll be in IRC in Pound Backdrop on Freenode. We also have started using Gitter. If you visit gitter.im/backdrop, you can join into our Gitter channel, and that can be useful because you can get pinged anytime, like when you're offline, it can send you an email. Handy alternative if you're not into IRC. Let's see, and we have a Reddit channel. The Reddit channel really is just for a general discussion forum if you want to chat about Backdrop in general, or discussions that are happening on the web about Backdrop or not Backdrop, but other things that we could derive inspiration from or something like that. Share a link on Reddit and then we can discuss it there. Let's see. Jen, could you take up the upcoming events?
Sure. So we have, obviously, this meeting every Thursday at 1 p.m. California time. We have a design call where we talk about the design-related things we're working on for Backdrop every other Thursday, an hour earlier at noon California time, Pacific time. And both of those calendars are available if you want to get the iCal feed from backdropcms.org/contribute. Upcoming Backdrop camps and conferences, we currently are still doing Backdrop talks at Drupal events when Drupal organizers ask us to come speak to their audiences about Backdrop. And on the calendar, we have Sand Camp, which is at the end of February, where we're also going to be doing our first full-day Backdrop training. We have Drupal Camp Utah, which is the beginning of March. They have specifically asked for someone to come and speak about Backdrop. And I've called it on the list here Drupal Camp Chicago, but I think you're right, it's Mid Camp West. It's in Chicago, but it's not actually Drupal Camp Chicago. It's Mid Camp, Midwest Drupal Camp, which is March 19th through 22nd. And Wes says he's submitted, is it 2 talks? Mid Camp? Just one on Backdrop.
Well, one on Backdrop, yeah. E8 theming and then Backdrop intro.
So that's coming up as well. So we are exiting crazy holiday travel season and entering crazy camp travel season. So I would expect to see that list starting to grow. There's a bunch of other things that are going to be going on this year. I know we have also volunteered to attend CivicCon, which is going to be in Denver in the end of May or early June. I'm not sure they have a date yet for that, but we have been asked to attend that, so we'll definitely be there. And then I think we're going to be attending DrupalCon North America, but I don't think we're going to be doing any talking about Backdrop there, at least not officially giving a session. But it's always good to go there and talk to people about what's going on in the world of Drupal anyway. So we'll be around, even though not officially presenting. We'll have dragon t-shirts, though, for anyone who wants one. So we'll just leave that out there. And then, yes, also the book, if you want a book on how to upgrade from Drupal to Backdrop, Todd Tomlinson's book is available on Apress. I think the Amazon website is still broken. It thinks it's coming out next year. I reported it to Amazon on Twitter, but I'm not sure the Amazon Twitter account has anything to do with the actual workings of the Amazon website. So we'll see if that actually fixes it. And then another Backdrop book is coming out Q2. So I would guess that's sometime between March and June. And that'll just be, I think it's called Beginning Backdrop or Beginning Backdrop CMS. That's exciting too. All right, well, that's the end of our official agenda. Is there anything anyone wants to talk about that wasn't on the agenda, maybe particularly relating to Backdrop 1.3?
I'm always happy to talk about the block stuff. I haven't had a chance to look at the latest code. How far did you get in the converting one block type to another?
It's done. It's waiting for, well, it has tests and it's working. It's marked needs review right now. The one caveat to it, and I posted it in that issue. The one caveat to it is that it's a one-way process right now. So you can convert a text block, that's what we'll call the blocks that are stored in the layout config. You convert text blocks into custom blocks so that they get stored in their own config files, but not the other way around.
Yeah, and we probably don't want to do that as a conversion. We probably want to do that as like copy this reusable block for like customize it or override it or like clone it or something like that, rather than convert it from a custom block to a layout block unless we test that it's not used in any other. Anyway, yeah. Did you do anything? Did you do anything with the essentially all of the different form elements and data was named different things in the 2 implementations? Did you do standardization of that at all?
I did make them more consistent with each other. Like I named them titles in both places and things like that. But sometimes it's a little bit weird because the block implementation is consistent with hook block info, right? Like the admin label is actually just has the machine key info, right? Because that corresponds with hook block info. And I think from a compatibility standpoint, that's required. We kind of can't change that because we need it so that the block object still is block arrow info, just the same as it was before when you load a custom block. So some things we couldn't change, but I did try to increase the consistency as much as possible. I'd actually say the one thing that, oh gosh, I went back and forth on this. Right now the body of a block is, in the config file, it's actually stored as two separate keys. It's body and then two subkeys underneath that, value and then format, right? Because it's a filtered HTML element. And I couldn't decide if I wanted to make those into, like, flatten it in the config file or not. Like, it seems like flattening it would be, you know, a reasonable thing to do so that it doesn't have this odd, you know, jimmy little extra JSON array in the config file.
I guess, but, like, you know, both of those belong specifically to the body or content, like, field. So I mean, how are we storing that in, like, other things when we're storing, like, a body field or something like that? It's probably stored in its own little subarray.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's, I actually unflattened it. It started flattened, and I unflattened it to try to, and that's how the values come in the form too. When you post the form, the field body comes back with the two sub things of the value and the format. So sort of making the config match the form architecture, the form configuration, and how it's used elsewhere seemed like a good idea.
I also think that's good because that way if somebody changes their text format, you get the correct output if you're running that conversion through format text every time. Whereas if you flattened it when it was saved and then they changed their text format and you just retrieved a string of text, you might be revealing tags that should be stripped.
Oh, well, I mean,
this is more just storage, right?
Right, yeah. We would still store the same data either way. It's just a matter of how we store it, whether or not we... When I say flatten, I really just mean that we wouldn't nest the values one inside of the other. We would store them next to each other in the root of the config file. And the inconsistency, why I'm bringing this up is because the text block patch flattened it, but the custom block one did not. So in the layout files, it's flattened, but when it gets moved to a custom block, it's not flattened. And so it's like, maybe we should update text blocks. I think it's within our ability to do that still.
Yeah, I was gonna switch text blocks to match the things, and I actually have some. I changed the code. I changed the pull request, but I didn't get a chance to do any tests, so I didn't actually post it. So, yeah. The other thing is, where exactly does the conversion that you made live from layout blocks to custom blocks? Which module owns that?
Right now, yeah. So one of the reasons that it's only one way right now is because custom blocks are still using the old hook block system with hook block configure and stuff like that. In order to do the conversion, we need a submit handler on the block form. And so text blocks, the new ones that are added in layout module, they can be made without custom block module turned on at all. They're just a new, store it in layout module configuration thing. And so they're using the new class-based approach, which lets you do not only the form, but also a validate and submit handler. And what they do, what it does is in the submit handler, it changes the block property for plugin. And so a plugin identifies what module is currently responsible for providing that block. And then layout module now just identifies if the plugin has changed, then it clones the block and then makes a new instance of the block that is the different type that matches the new plugin. So in the submit handler, it's really the block, the text block basically just says my plugin has changed, and then layout module, when it sees that in its own submit handler, says, oh, I need to actually delete this block, create a new block of a different type and then put it in the same place.
Okay.
So anyway, I would suggest looking at the pull request, and your feedback there would be super valuable.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. Also, this is sort of another the one thing that I wanted to change that I didn't get a chance to is with custom blocks. And maybe someone else has just noticed this too. Custom blocks as they are right now, when you edit them in the layout, you can edit the body, obviously, and that affects everywhere the block is used. And you can change the admin title of the block, and that gets changed everywhere. But you can't actually change the default display title. All you can do is override it. So the only way, if you have like a block that's labeled contact, the only way to change that to contact us is to go into the block interface, because the default title isn't listed in the pop-up layout block editor. So even though you can edit 2 of the 3 things, like sort of like system-wide, one of them just isn't available in that interface. And I was going to add it, but then it sort of there was some interactions with the layout module also calling its overridden title just title. So I mean, it seems like if you should be able to change the content and change the label of a custom block anywhere, you should also be able to change the default title. So that's needs to probably be done. I'm not sure if anyone else has time or something like that, or whether you can probably sneak.
It's already included in that same pull request, actually.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because
right,
I noticed
review it.
It was wildly confusing because the text block, it doesn't have an admin label because it's not reusable, right?
Right.
And so what would happen is you would create a custom text block, and then up at the very top was the title, and you would type in a title, and that's the front end display title. Then you would hit save, and then you would check the box for make reusable, hit save, and then you would go and edit that block a second time, and now the custom title that you just created was no longer editable, and in the exact same place in the form was now the admin label. And it was like, and so it was wildly confusing. It was like unacceptably so, and so we kind of had to fix that in order to.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you had a chance to do it, because I didn't have a chance to work through all of that.
Yeah, and what it does is if you select, when you edit the block the second time, the display title is at the top. The admin label stays actually down at the bottom when you're in the layout dialog, because it's unlikely you're going to change the admin label from within the layout UI, but it is possible.
My recommendation was also to move the admin label always to the bottom, because it's the least important element on the page. Like when you're adding a block, you care about what its title is, and you care about what people see. You don't really care about what its admin label is. But have that element at the very top is like completely counterproductive, because people always get confused about what an admin label is anyway when they're thinking, I'm going to add a block, I know what the title is, they type that in first. And so that shouldn't be the admin label field anyway. So if we could like bury that down at the bottom, that would be much better. So that's how it is on the
submit button's on the bottom, so no matter where we put it, you still have to go past it to get to submit.
Right. But as long as it's not the first thing that's like, this is the thing you care about least, and you don't understand.
Okay.
Yeah, there's actually, in the issue, you're going to have to be pretty quick about it, because there's no pause button on animated GIFs, but there's an animated GIF in the issue. It's issue 1515, and it runs through the entire process of making a custom text block, checking the reusable checkbox, adding in an admin label, going to the admin configuration for the list of all custom blocks, and then editing it, and then seeing it on the front end. It runs through the whole thing. But yeah, right now I left the custom block admin form, the standalone form for editing a block, is unchanged. It's exactly the same as it was before. But if you're within a dialog, it moves the label to the bottom to be consistent with how the text block works. Because the text block, the checkbox for make reusable and the admin label are at the bottom. And so it makes it so that when you switch between one type and the other type, it looks like it's still the same thing. It's confusing from an implementation standpoint, but from like an end user standpoint, it's pretty much seamless, which is nice.
Can I just say I'm really excited about the future of blocks in Backdrop?
Oh yeah, I am so excited about them. I think once we add relationships, which is the last kind of silver bullet, actually the relationships and the ability to embed an arbitrary entity, which blurs the line a little bit between our structure and our content, but those two things like really just turns it into something like truly amazingly powerful. Right now it's just better and it's more convenient and it's easier. And it's slightly more powerful, but it's not like OMG, limitless. It's not quite panels, but we're getting there. The trouble with panels is its limitless power is also limitless confusion.
With limitless power comes limitless confusion.
Okay. Anything else? I would say for a call to action for tomorrow, if anybody's got time on their hands today and tomorrow, don't just look at the 1.3 list, because the 1.3 list is a little bit weird, but look at the 1.3 list and in combination with the needs work tag, the PR needs work tag, because those are the things that are most likely to still make it before the release tomorrow, because they're all really pretty close. So if you're looking for something to do, go and find the needs work issues. Go and find the needs work issues, review them, make a new pull request if possible, and then remove the needs work and mark it needs review again, and then I'll take a look at it.
We're working on one that multiple people are working on. Should we make a pull request against their pull request, or?
The way that I've been handling it is make a new pull request and then close their pull request, but make sure everything is linked together and that you guys aren't. It's really hard to not work on the same thing at the same time. But if you're like, I want to try this again, like add a comment that's like, I'm going to make a new PR, and then when you make a new PR, close theirs, then that way they can come see what you're doing and you can kind of trade, and then you can be like, you try it now, and then I'll try it now, and then you can kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that way we don't end up with like 500 open pull requests that are all like dependent on each other.
Yeah, close the previous pull request and file your own new one. And if you are the recipient of somebody who has had their pull request closed upon them, actually, I guess I'm not sure everybody has the ability to close pull requests now that I think about it. But anyway, if your pull request has been closed, don't fret about it. Just file a new one. Like you really just go to your individual repository and hit create pull request a second time, and just make a new one. Once your pull request has been closed, force pushing to it apparently will not reopen it, so you actually need to make a new pull request. But we like to treat pull requests in the same way as patches. That's like, if your pull request just becomes out of date or closed, just make a new one. And it's the equivalent on Drupal.org of just saying, I made a new patch, right? So pull requests make liberally if needed.
Okay.
Yeah, usually what we end up doing is we take the last pull request and then we copy it down and then we modify it and then we file it as a new pull request. So yeah, maintaining attribution in that process is also a little bit messy. I usually, if the first person has done a lot of work, then I'll keep their commit as is, and then I'll add a second commit on top of it to maintain the attribution of the first person's work and then the second person's work. Okay. I wanted to add I threw it into the chat, but that Backdrop CMS migrating from Drupal to Backdrop book is actually now fixed on Amazon.com, so you can finally buy it on Amazon, which is nice. So it's available immediately. Apparently, you can even buy used versions of it already. I'm not sure where those came from, but apparently people have already finished migrating their sites and are ready to resell their book.
That was easy. Don't need this anymore.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you in IRC. Really excited for the release tomorrow, and yeah, soldier on.
Go team.
Go team. All right. Hi, guys.